I'd like to now introduce to you Dr. Brittany Hollerbach. Dr. Brittany Hollerbach is going to be visiting with us about cancer and modifiable risk factors in firefighters, and we'll also explore the latest evidence on lifestyle, occupational, and organizational factors that influence cancer risk in the fire service and actionable strategies to reduce it. Please give another round of applause for Dr. Brittany Hollerbach.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Okay, who's familiar with Science to the Station? One. Very good, cool, learning opportunity. So, awesome. My name's Brittany Hollerbach. I am a former firefighter, and then I went back to school, got my degree in kinesiology or exercise science, and now I get to do research with this population that I love. So I research firefighter health and wellness. I work for a small private nonprofit called NDRI. If anyone knows Dr. Sarah Jenke, that's my boss. So I have to wrangle her on a constant basis, which is great. Right, so part of NDRI is Science to the Station, and it's our kind of dissemination arm. And earlier, Natasha talked a little bit, Dr. Sully talked about the importance of community-based participatory research and really working with the fire service, right? Not being a researcher and saying, what is my question? What do I want to know? But what does the fire service want to know, right? And so part of the goal then of Science to the Station is getting the information out. So Science to the Station, our logo is a nerd bird, and this is the nerd bird live and in person. So you guys can all say now that you've met the nerd bird, he has his own Instagram. You can follow him. But anyway, so we'll talk a little bit about Science to the Station later. But I'm excited to talk to you guys today about cancer and modifiable risk factors. We'll see if my clicker is working. I don't know. Doesn't seem to be, so I may just have to have you advance the slides. Thank you so much. So earlier, Dr. Sully did a great job of talking about the IARC and the history of cancer designation in the fire service. So as she mentioned, IARC has officially classified the occupation of firefighting as Class 1 carcinogenic to humans. Next slide. And one more slide. So that's the monograph you saw earlier, firefighting is carcinogenic to humans, but then go one more. And also, did you know that shift work, the classification of shift work is also considered carcinogenic. And so firefighters are what? Firefighters first, and they're shift workers. So that's kind of this double impact there when it comes to cancer. And so two of those things I think are just very important to remember, and you can look up IARC and learn more about that later. Next, please. So I think first I just want to do a quick review of some of the things that firefighters are exposed to, and this is not a shock to anybody in the room. But the International Agency on Research in Cancer, and I'm going to apologize for this table that's in the right-hand corner because it looks like the lines got a little cut off funny, but so sorry, it looks a little funny there. But right, so IARC, and Dr. Sully discussed this earlier, that there's classifications based on how much evidence we have, but look at just on the left there, some of these things. So we talked about shift work, and even sleep disruption is noted as a possible carcinogen or a probable carcinogen. UV radiation, a known carcinogen. Diesel exhaust is a known carcinogen. The products of combustion. There's multiple carcinogens in there. Both Curtis and David did a wonderful graphic with smoke in the background, and it listed all these different chemicals that are found in smoke, and a lot of those products of combustion are known carcinogens. And then, of course, other products released during fires as well. Next slide. So this is some of the group 1 known carcinogens. These things are known to cause cancer in humans, and these are just kind of, hey, your everyday run-of-the-mill things that firefighters are exposed to. Again, nothing that you haven't heard of: arsenic, benzene, butadiene, formaldehyde, silica, radioactivity, asbestos, benzopyrenes, cadmium, sulfuric acid, diesel exhaust. Like I don't need to read all these chemicals to you, but these are just the class 1 carcinogens. Next, and then of course there's 2A and 2B chemicals. And again, this is based on how much research we have, especially specific to humans. So group 1, there is enough evidence that it's a known carcinogen. Then group 2, A and B, a little bit less known. And a lot of these come from animal models, and we know that they're cancer causing in animal models, but we need more information in humans. Obviously, we can't treat a human like a rat and put it in a box and see if we give it this chemical, if it causes cancer. So it takes a bit longer to find these things out in humans, and especially in firefighters. And cancer tends to have a long latency period, so it's hard to study cancer in firefighters. Earlier, David and Curtis talked about the firefighter cancer study, the NFR, the National Firefighter Registry, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well, because it's so important to be part of things like that so that we can study cancer in firefighters over time. Because the good news is cancer doesn't always occur in every firefighter. So when it does, it's super important that they're a part of a study so that we can study it and document it and try to understand cancer in firefighters a little bit better. Next slide, please. Perfect. So firefighters and cancer. What in the world is cancer? Like, do we know? When I first started studying cancer, I was like, okay, well, I don't know, I picture like a tumor or a growth, and that's basically what it is. It's when cells kind of grow uncontrollably, out of control, and Dr. Sully mentioned earlier, it can happen from epigenetic changes. So basically, cells lose their ability to regulate growth and control. And NIOSH and Curtis and David mentioned this earlier. NIOSH found that firefighters have a 9% higher risk of being diagnosed with cancer and a 14% greater risk of dying from cancer compared to the general public. So, again, here's some data related to firefighters. On the right, in small blue writing, you can see just a whole host of cancers that through various meta-analyses and studies have been related to the occupation of firefighting. And we've talked about those a little bit today, so I won't go in depth there. But studies have found more than 20 different cancers related to firefighting. So that's why we're all here today. We know that cancer is prevalent in the fire service, and we definitely need to take steps for early prevention and detection and understand what we can do both on the fire ground and in our own lives. What can we do to lead a healthier lifestyle to try to decrease our risk for cancer? Next slide, please. All right, and we talked a little bit about women in the fire service and cancer specific to women, and this is a hard thing, and again, it was mentioned earlier, so women have represented a small proportion of the fire service, and so because of that, it is an even smaller proportion of women in the fire service who end up getting cancer. So it's hard to study, but it's just something that we need more research on, and we're looking as we move forward. So this is kind of what we know right now. So Daniels found in 2014 that the cancer incidence among women was elevated but not statistically significant. So statistical significance means that you can kind of prove beyond chance. It's not just chance that we saw this result of elevated cancer, but we know that there's no error in that measurement. And so we didn't have quite a big enough sample size to say statistically significant difference. Female bladder cancer incidence was statistically significant in the Daniels study. Then nearly half of all women's cancer cases were breast cancer, which is 46% higher than the general population. Then Lee in 2019 found that females had an elevated risk of both brain and thyroid cancers as well as melanoma. Lee also found incidence of breast and cervical cancer, though again not statistically significant. And again, this is usually due to such a small sample size, so it's hard to get that mathematical certainty that we know. Ma and colleagues in 2006 found that female firefighters had significantly increased incidence rates of overall cancer, cervical and thyroid cancers, as well as Hodgkin's disease. So you can see some of these brain, breast, thyroid cancers popping up numerous times. Ma also found that female firefighters had higher rates of colon, rectum, stomach, and kidney cancer, though again, not statistically significant, and like I mentioned, probably due to low sample size. And in this study, they also found that breast cancer incidence in female firefighters was approximately the same as the Florida general population. So in some populations of women, it looks like breast cancer is elevated for firefighters, and in some, it looks like it's the same as the general population. So we just need to do more research. It's really hard to say. So if you want to kind of click through this, there's just some, there's some underlines. So what I want to focus on is modifiable risk factors. So I think that so often firefighters think there's nothing they can do about cancer. It's just something that happens to them because of the nature of their job. But I want to talk about modifiable risk factors. And this is something that firefighters and non-firefighters can focus on, right? So the things that are underlined in that kind of gray line are things that you can't change. Unfortunately, you can't change your genetics or your age. Your hormones, like, yes, with hormone therapy and some supplements, like there's some moderation there, but in general, like the hormones that you have are the hormones that you have. But look at all of these things that are underlined with a red line. These are the things that we can change. We can change our exposures to radiation, like to a point, but especially like UV radiation. We can wear sunscreen when we're out on the training ground and when we're off duty and when we're on spring break and we're hanging out. Like, you can apply that extra coat of sunscreen and protect your skin a little bit better. Your exposures, your alcohol use, right? Not saying that you shouldn't drink. I love to have a drink every now and again, but you can learn how to moderate that behavior. Same with your diet, your physical activity, your exercise. Oh my gosh, exercise is hugely cancer protective. So you can learn what exercise works best for you, and that can help moderate your cancer risk. Tobacco use, obesity. I'll talk in a few slides about the impact of obesity on cancer growth in the human body and how that can impact your risk of getting cancer. So, you know, cancer can be, it's heavy, right? It's a heavy thing, and sometimes it does just happen. It's not always explained or explainable, but there are so many things we can do to be proactive, and so that's what I want to talk about. All right, so let's talk a little bit about size up on the fire ground. It is often done without necessary protective equipment. We talked earlier, Curtis and David talked about SCBA use, right? And we're getting better, and of course it's a cultural change. So if you are a leader in your fire department, or if you're just a champion for change in your fire department, be that champion. Emphasize wearing your SCBA from on scene to off scene, not just on scene through the fire's knocked out, but all the way. Wear your SCBA the entire time. It's so, so important. There are tiny particulates that you can't see and can't be measured with a gas monitor, but that doesn't mean that they are not present, and it doesn't mean, and we don't know what all of them are, but a lot of them that have been identified were listed on that slide as known carcinogens. So also think about diesel exhaust. Diesel is a class 1 known carcinogen. Where are we parking the truck? Upwind, downwind? Where are you setting your gear? I was just having a conversation last night about how before we had diesel capture, and not every fire department is using diesel capture in the bay. How many folks are using diesel capture, some kind of cleaning system to clean out the air in the bay? Fantastic, I see hands raised, this is awesome. So not everyone is doing that. And then where do you put your gear, right? Like, turn your pants down over your boots and set it right next to the diesel exhaust on the truck. How many folks either do that now or used to do that? Yeah, right? Because we just don't think about it. We don't think about it. But all of these things are things to just start thinking about. All right, next slide, please. So suppression, what's going on during interior operations? Obviously, proper PPE and SCBA is key. Exterior operations, of course, you need your protective PPE, and then thinking about where we're staging folks. And I think in this picture, it doesn't look like the guy has gloves on, and like, dude, you're definitely close enough, you should have gloves on in this picture. So, you know, just making the little changes, and every department faces the culture and the change a little bit differently, but I see it happening. I see it in discussions with firefighters. We are moving the needle, and we just have to continue to have those conversations and be like, listen, it's not cool to fight fire like without your gloves, or not come home and wash your helmet. Or I remember I fought a fire and my helmet looked so good, and my department was like, yeah, it's not structurally sound anymore, so we're gonna give you a new one. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want a new one though. I like the old one, the one that looks really cool and burnt up. No, not cool. So like, we're changing that culture, right? Like, you don't need a dirty, crispy helmet to look like a cool firefighter. You can look like a cool, clean firefighter that hopefully isn't gonna get cancer by cleaning your gear and getting a new helmet. Next slide, please. All right, so let's talk a little bit about rehab. When we are removing gear, there are some great videos from UL and the FSRI, the Fire Service Research Institute, and they talk about removing gear on the fire scene. What is like the first thing we take off when we come out of a fire? Oftentimes it's our gloves, right? Can't wait to get our gloves off. And then what are you touching with your hands that were clean? We're touching our face, we're taking our hood off, we're taking the rest of our gear off. So now our hands are secondary contaminated from all the things we had just protected them against. So think through the method of how we take off our gear. Like I mentioned, UL, Underwriters Laboratories, and FSRI, Fire Service Research Institute, have some great videos on how to take off your gear and take off your gloves last. It's not always feasible, right? Like sometimes you have to take everything off really quickly, and it makes sense to take off your gloves first so you get some dexterity back. But even if you take off your gloves and quickly use a wipe or a towel, that can help in reducing some of the carcinogenic material that's on your hands. So just thinking through our processes, right? Just taking like that 1 second to think a little bit differently. And I also want to say, some of this can seem overwhelming because it's like, oh, well, you need to make a change here, and you need to make a change here, and you need to take off your gear differently, and you need to store your gear differently. If one thing you take away from today, take away a 1%. What's your 1% change? Maybe today is a 1% change. Maybe it's this month in my department, we're gonna make this small change. And then next month we'll make a small change. And the next month we'll make a small change. It doesn't all have to happen at once. That's huge. So removal of gear, transfer of carcinogens. Also, gear bags have become much more widely used. How many gear bags used to get stuffed like underneath your bunker racks because no one used them? You just carry around your gear like by your bootstraps. And now we're learning like, oh, those gear bags may actually hold some benefit, and they're making even better gear bags that hold in some of those off-gassing materials. So take advantage of those if you're a decision maker in your department. Ask, what type of gear bags do we have, and do they protect against any carcinogens off-gassing, and what does that mean, and how often should the gear bag be washed, and where am I storing that gear bag, and those types of things as well. Next slide, please. Right, so in overhaul, of course, there are inhalation exposures, and I won't go over this too much because I know the folks from FCSN mentioned this as well. Wear your SCBA all the way through, and this is true for gloves. So often at the end, we're ready for mop up, right, and we're like rolling the hose, and you're rolling the hose with clean hands because I'm so tired of wearing my fire gloves, and at this point, they're like soaking wet anyway. But probably just wear your gloves while you're rolling up the hose that's been drugged through God knows what, like rather than exposing your hands to that. So again, just those tiny little decisions that you can make. And then it was mentioned earlier, right, the monitoring of CO and hydrogen cyanide may not be enough. That's two things we're monitoring for when there's hundreds of different particulates in the air. So just think about all the things that could be there. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is some really great research and resources for you. So if you're not familiar with the 10 considerations related to cardiovascular and chemical exposure risks, this was put out by NIOSH in conjunction with UL, FSRI, and the Fire Service Research Institute. It gives you some great guidelines for decon and exposure reduction. So if you're not familiar with it, take a picture, check out their website. It's really, really good information. Also, the hood, you can see how dirty a hood on the left is compared to a hood on the right. And then in the bottom picture, they're using decon wipes. There are a lot of different wipes out there. There are like specific wipes that are marketed to the fire service. Even something as simple as baby wipes can help. And even something as simple as soap and water, right? Like doing soap and water decon in some of the UL studies showed that it removed up to 85% of the carcinogens or the particulates from gear. So it doesn't have to be something fancy, it doesn't have to be something expensive, but the point is decon versus not doing it at all. Next slide, please. All right, so your exposures and your equipment, we talked through this a little bit, and I talked about gear storage, right? So it's so important. And then I know we hate washing the outside of our helmet, and honestly, I'm not even as worried if you wash the outside of your helmet. I'm worried if you wash the inside of your helmet, right? We were talking earlier about the incidence of brain cancer and thyroid cancer. Like, where does that hood sit? And when you take your hood off, do you take your hood all the way off? No, you throw the thing around your neck, and then that's exactly where it fits with all the particulates that it picked up during the fire. So just be cognizant of those things. Perhaps when you're in rehab, you take the hood fully off and either switch it out, that'd be ideal, or put it somewhere that's not right around your neck. Same with your helmet. I can't remember ever washing the interior of my helmet. It's just not something that I thought about, but absolutely we should be washing the interior of our helmet. Most helmets, the manufacturer provides instructions for washing the inside of your helmet and the netting that's in there, the webbing, so that is very, very important. Think about dirty gear in personal vehicles. I don't think we have volunteer firefighters in representation here today, but even career firefighters move from station to station. And how often do you just throw that gear bag like in your trunk or on the back seat? And then what are you doing over the weekend? Like transporting gear to your kid's soccer game, also in the trunk where your dirty gear bag was sitting. So think about that, and perhaps maybe wrapping your gear bag also in a trash bag, or just putting a trash bag down on the trunk or the back seat so that your gear bag can go on top of that, so you can remove everything before then putting like family items in there. So again, it's these easy little things that we may not think about, but we might think about moving forward, and just those tiny little things might help us moving forward. Next slide, please. Right, so I was talking with someone about this last night. Was it you? Yeah, I thought so. So this is a great study that Jeff Stoll did with RTI, and they used a fluorescent powder. And so they had before the fluorescent powder, and so they had him bunker geared up, and then after exposure to the fluorescent powder in bunker gear. And the fluorescent powder in black light can show where those kind of interfaces are. And so even though, excuse me, I think that and I think it's getting better also, but I think firefighters have a bit of invincibility, thinking that our PPE is protecting us, and it is, but let's be clear, it's protecting you against the heat of the environment that you're going into. It's not necessarily protecting you against these tiny particulate matter that can go through the interfaces of the gear. And as you can see, it's not so much the gear, like his torso and arms look pretty clean, but where it's getting through is those thinner places, like your hood is quite thin, and it's meant to protect against flashover, but it's not necessarily meant to protect against particulates. So you see PAHs are getting through on the wrist, neck, forehead, and back, as well as at the groin area. And then where your pants interface with your boots, that's also an area where we see particulate getting in. Next slide, please. I won't talk much about cancer presumption. It was covered wonderfully earlier by Captain Webb. And there's some great stuff going on in the state of Texas. I think overall, we don't want to lean on presumption because clearly it can be quite a battle, right? And so it's unfortunate that presumption, like in our brains, I think we think, oh, presumption, it's a win, like it means that it's going to be covered. No, it means it should be covered. And then there's a long battle process after that. So cancer presumption is incredibly important. Continue to lobby for that. You have a great bunch of legislators that have come today to talk with y'all, to be here to listen. They are advocating for you. Continue to advocate for yourself. And legislators continue to push for this because this is so important. But it's not the end all be all, right? And presumption definitely does not mean guaranteed coverage. Next slide, please. So one thing that I included is the IPSDI exposure tracker. We've talked about a couple exposure trackers today. The University of Miami has the great personal exposure reporting system. The IPSDI exposure tracker is completely free. There's a couple ways that you can do it. Your department can integrate it into your CAD system. So I think the old NFIRS used to track exposures, yes? And so now, Nearest, I don't think tracks exposures, but you can integrate IPSDI's exposure tracker into that system so that it can help with exposure tracking. If your department doesn't have it, you as an individual can download this app for free and track your exposures. I highly recommend it. It can seem cumbersome, absolutely. It's like you're reporting, I think Curtis mentioned, like, yeah, at the end of a long shift and at the end of a long fire, you're exhausted. You don't want to log your exposures. You don't want to like fully fill out your report. You're like, oh my gosh, I just want to be done. Totally get it. But I highly recommend this. And the benefit is you can even go back, like, you know, get decon first, take a shower within the hour, and then start logging your exposures. Think back, what were we exposed to? Log the date. Just log as much detail as you can, because listen, this will help you down the road should you ever get cancer. It really is in your best interest to have more information rather than less. Again, this is just for you. This is your personal exposure tracker app. IPSDI is a data company, so they store it in secure cloud storage. It doesn't go to your department. It can't be subpoenaed. It is solely for you. So this is very important for you to keep a record of your exposures, whether you use this or Miami's PER. There's different types of exposure trackers out there. Use one of them. Next slide, please. Oh, perfect. So I mentioned earlier that increased rates of overweight and obesity are associated with different types of cancers. What we've also found is that the cancers on this slide here that are related to overweight and obesity are actually also a lot of the same cancers that are elevated amongst firefighters. Is there a relationship? Perhaps. We do see high rates of overweight and obesity amongst firefighters, but even independent of obesity, we see increased rates of cancer amongst firefighters. Now, I think where the worry comes in is the high prevalence of firefighters with overweight and obesity, and then the risk for cancer, and then doubling that risk, right, or combining that risk with overweight and with just the job itself. So again, that's that modifiable risk factors. If you can make your body healthier and lower some of your risk factors, then that's the way to go, right? All right, next slide, please. Oh, sorry, yep, there's all these little click boxes. Okay, so, and then if you wanna click through, yeah, there's just some underlining there. Perfect, thank you. So firefighters are already at an increased risk for the cancers that are underlined in red, most of these. And then these are also cancers that you're more at risk for if you are obese. So you can see how then there's this increased risk with obesity of, let's look at brain cancer. 50% increased risk if you're already obese, and you're already at an increased risk for brain cancer just by the nature of being a firefighter. So think through dietary habits, working on personal habits, physical activity, your diet and nutrition. All those things are important because it's not just the job that increases your risk of cancer, it's all the things. Next slide, please. Okay, alcohol and cancer. I know this is everyone's least favorite slide, but I want to point something out. 3.5 tends to be kind of this magical number. So if we look at head and neck cancer, for example, 50 grams of alcohol a day, what's 50 grams? It's about 3.5 drinks. So 3.5 drinks of alcohol per day on average, so that would be every day you have 3.5 drinks, on average increases the risk of head and neck cancer 2 to 3 times. Okay? The risk of breast cancer, women who drank 45 grams of alcohol, so that's about 3 drinks, had a 50% higher risk for breast cancer. Colorectal cancer, 50 grams of alcohol a day, that's that 3.5 drink number, had a 50% higher risk of colorectal cancer. Liver cancer, we know that the primary cause is, particularly of liver cancer, is alcohol, the primary cause. So, and then esophageal cancer, an independent risk factor, particularly for esophageal squamous cell carcinoma, is alcohol. So it's not to say that if you are a moderate drinker, you will get cancer. It's if there is a heavy rate of drinking or an elevated rate of drinking, it can be associated with increased risk for cancer. So another way that you can help moderate your personal risk is by making some of these personal decisions and just being aware, right? All things in moderation is what I say. It's totally okay to have a pizza every now and again. It's not okay to have pizza every day. It's totally okay to have a drink of alcohol every now and again. Excuse me. It's probably not okay to be having 3.5 drinks every day. So moderation, right? Next slide, please. Okay. Guys, if we don't know, tobacco is the leading cause of cancer and death from cancer. Tobacco, not good. Next slide. So the good news is in the fire service, smoking rates, like actual cigarette smoking, has gone way down. And a lot of this has come through research that showed it was bad, and then policy changes. So how many folks have policies within your departments that say you can't smoke either while on duty or at all as a firefighter with a certain department? Yeah, a lot of you, right? So a lot of that policy drove smoking rates in the fire service down, which is fantastic. On the flip side, next slide, please. And one more. So that just was saying that the rates of smoking have gone down, but this shows that the rates of smokeless tobacco is up, right? So I think that there is a perception that maybe smokeless tobacco is healthier than cigarette smoking, and it doesn't seem to be the case. So we can see that there's high prevalences of career and volunteer firefighters smoking. When you compare to the furthest bar to the right, that's U.S. males use of smokeless tobacco in the United States. And so both career and volunteer firefighters have a higher rate of smokeless tobacco use than males in the general population. And that is not good. Smokeless tobacco use also can lead to cancer. So I talked a little bit earlier about how shift work has specifically been linked as a carcinogen, and that is probably due to the interruption of circadian rhythms. We're doing some research now looking at the importance of sleep. I think in health and wellness in general, we have talked a lot about all the different factors. We talked about diet and exercise and nutrition, and all of a sudden, I think this latest frontier is sleep. And I was having a conversation earlier with Josh about how important my sleep is. And first of all, you guys, I love my sleep. I'm a grumpy bear if I have to get up too early in the morning and I haven't had a good night's sleep. But the research shows sleep is super important. If you haven't, read the book Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. It is life-changing. And he's also very sciencey. So if you don't like reading the book or it puts you to sleep, so if you have trouble sleeping, try read Matthew Walker's book. He even says at the beginning of his book, I hope this book puts you to sleep, because sleep is that important. But if you get through Matthew Walker's book, it's really good. He also does a couple podcasts with Andrew Huberman. So if you're into the Huberman podcasts, he does a whole series on there on sleep. It's so incredibly interesting, and sleep is so, so important. So I know the sleep is disrupted in the fire service. You can't stop the overnight calls. We've tossed around the idea of having like a 9 to 5 with an answering service after the fact, but that does not seem to fly in the fire service. So I don't think it's appropriate for Ms. Smith to say, sorry, you've reached us after hours, please call back in the morning. So with that being said, you will still get woken up in the middle of the night, but focus on your sleep hygiene, right? When you are at the station and you can like take a nap. How many departments here have napping policies or are allowed to nap while on duty during the day? 1, 2, couple. Okay, great, a handful. Cool. So that's become much more prevalent. And I think as the landscape of the fire service changes, our call volumes change. We're now in all hazards response. And so we're responding to so many more calls than we were before. Before, it was not appropriate to sleep during the day. Now it's like, if you can catch a nap during the day and you're gonna have a busy night, go ahead and do it. We advocate for safety naps all the way. Okay, so sleep management. So sleep disorders. There was a great study, Barger and colleagues, I think, studied over 2,000 firefighters, and they found that out of those 2,000, about 37% screened positive for at least one sleep disorder. They were the sleep disorders were things like sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, insomnia, and those things can be related to depression, cardiovascular disease, crashes, diabetes, anxiety, and obesity. We found that linking shifts like 48 hours or more at a time seemed to be worse on sleep, which makes sense, right? You can imagine, especially if you're in a department where when you're working a 48, you're not getting a full night's sleep. That's incredibly detrimental to the body. Of course, working in busy houses, not having private quarters, and we are starting to be able to tone out firefighters differently. Like when I was a firefighter, everybody in the whole house could hear all the tones all the time. So if the medic unit was going out, we all woke up. If the engine was going out, we all woke up. If the quint was going out, we all woke up. So now we're doing a much better job of having more private quarters where you're only getting toned out if your unit is going. That's fantastic to try to disrupt sleep as little as possible. Sleep promoting environments, whether at the firehouse or at home, your environment should be dark, it should be quiet. Put that cell phone down. You should not be looking at that blue light all night. Stop the doom scrolling before you go to bed. Put it down, get in a restful state of mind as much as you can at the firehouse, right? And even more so at home. But sleep promoting environments, napping, and effective use of caffeine. So first of all, the firehouse is known for drinking coffee at all hours of the day. Y'all gotta stop drinking caffeine by like a certain time in the day. And now I understand that you may run calls overnight, but in theory, like you should try to stop drinking caffeine by 2 or 3 p.m. so that it gets out of your body system. It has a half-life of like 8 hours, so it's still in your body quite a bit after you've consumed your last cup. Also, there is a strategic way to use caffeine. Who's heard this? Drink a cup of coffee, immediately lay down for a nap, 20, 30 minutes, and then you'll wake up feeling more refreshed. Why is that? It takes about 20 to 30 minutes for that caffeine to totally digest into your system and for your body to feel the effect of the caffeine. So not only do you get a nap in, but you feel more alert when you wake up because the caffeine's taking effect. Hey, cool trick, right? So effective use of caffeine. All right, and Stress. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're all stressed, absolutely. Cortisol, the stress hormone itself, can, in elevated levels for prolonged periods of time, can be an increased risk factor for cancer. So this repeated exposures to trauma and all the things we face on the job and this high level of cortisol, if we're not dealing with it, that cortisol can increase cancer risk. The other things that increase cancer risk: obesity, poor fitness, poor nutrition, alcohol use, tobacco use, poor sleep, our exposures. So it's kind of like this vicious cycle. Next slide, please. But there is a stress continuum, right? So there's a sweet spot. We know that you need a certain level of stress. If you get woken up in the middle of the night and you're like lackadaisical about going on a call, like that's not a good state to be in. You need to be vigilant and hyper aware, absolutely. But you also need to figure out where that continuum kind of ends, like where's your sweet spot for stress. You shouldn't be hyper vigilant all the time. That's not good for your body. It actually increases your risk for cardiovascular disease and cancer and overweight and obesity, amongst a whole host of other things. So that accumulation of, and it's not just your occupational stress from work either, right? It's you go home and then you have family stress. You have to figure out how to de-stress both from the job and adjust to family life so that you can manage those stresses and not be running on a high level of cortisol all the time. Next slide. So you need to find the best way for you, and everyone's different, but the best way for you to fill up and empty out your bucket. So firefighters are the most giving people. We are constantly helping our neighbor or our fellow firefighter build the fence in their backyard, or we're picking up their kids, or we're making dinner for somebody, we're helping somebody study for a promotional exam. We're giving, 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 giving. You can't keep giving if your bucket is empty. If you go home at the end of a shift and you are spent, like verbalize that to whoever it is at home, your friend, your roommate, your spouse, your parents. Verbalize that you need some recharging and fill up that bucket. And whatever that looks like for you. Maybe it's a nap, maybe it's physical activity, maybe it's listening to music, maybe it's some good food, some good nutritious food once you get home. But find that way to find the balance, because you can't keep giving if you're giving from an empty reserve. Next slide, please. Okay, so the FCSN folks alluded to this earlier, Curtis and David. There is something called Detect Together. They're a great group based out of New Hampshire, and they have what's called 3 steps detect. So this is so important, and it's awesome because it's firefighter proof. It's super easy. So prevention, talk about prevention, preventative risk, talk about screening. Early screening saves lives, and early detection. You are your best use. You are the key. You know your body better than anybody else. Next slide, please. So we talked about survival rates earlier, and I left this in here because I wanted to reiterate this for you guys. Look how crazy this is if you detect a cancer in stage 1 on the left versus stage 4 on the right. Bladder cancer, for example, goes from a 69% survivability if caught early to a 6% survivability if not caught until late in stage 4. The other cancers are very similar. As Curtis and David mentioned earlier, cancers could be like prostate, 99.9% survivable. So I think also firefighters have this like, well, if I get cancer, I get cancer, and I guess I'll just die. Hold on, even if you get cancer, it doesn't mean that you have to die from it. Like, there's certainly circumstances where someone gets a cancer and that is an inevitable outcome, but it doesn't have to be. If we catch it early, it's so much easier to take care of that cancer and survive it than if it's caught late. Next slide, please. So, what is the most common sign of cancer? It is a subtle and persistent change in your health. Well, what the heck does that mean? Okay, so next slide, please. We'll talk a little bit about it. But before I talk about that, 3 steps. So I told you this is firefighter proof, right? Know your grade. What do you feel like on a regular basis? Does your back hurt? Do you have a lump in your neck, right? Like they talked about the firefighter that had a lump in their neck and blamed it on sinuses. Like, when have you ever had a sinus infection that made a lump in your neck the size of a softball? That's not normal. So monitor this stuff. And again, I want to say, bless you, I want to say, a subtle and persistent change in your health does not mean you have cancer, but it does mean you should talk to a healthcare provider. And talking to a healthcare provider also doesn't mean that it's cancer. It means you're just getting it checked out. So open up those conversations. First of all, if you don't have a primary care provider, you need to have a primary care provider. That's number one. Number two, know what your good is. Know what normal feels like for you. So all of a sudden, if something's different, your back is aching, you have a lump or a knot, or your throat is sore all the time, or you're choking on your food and you never used to do that before, consult with a physician. Put a little note in your calendar, tell your spouse, don't tell your spouse, whatever works best for you, tell somebody, hey, remind me, I'm feeling this way. Let's say I've had blood in my stool, right? And that's kind of weird. So I don't know, it happened once, monitor it. If it happened once, it doesn't mean that it's cancer, monitor it. If it's still going on after 2 weeks, talk to your physician. Again, doesn't mean it's cancer, it means you need to talk to somebody. Okay, so this is a perfect slide. If you have back pain, if you have low energy all of a sudden, if you have visible changes. Now, this individual is like looking in their pants. My boss, Sarah, said, I don't know why they're looking in their pants, but I guess if anything's going on down there, you should definitely talk to your physician. I agree. I also want to say, I think that this is just showing if you've had unexplained weight loss or gain. And I love that my boss's mind went all the way there. But either way, if you have changes in anything that you have to look in your pants for, or if you have unexplained weight loss or gain, talk to your physician. Same thing with bathroom habits, right? Blood in your urine, blood in your stool, that's not normal. Again, if it happens once, okay, note it. But if it happens persistently, go get it checked out. There is no harm in talking to a physician. There is no harm in talking to a physician. Okay, how many people have heard of Crackle Magazine? Awesome, quite a few of you. If you haven't, it is an amazing firefighter lifestyle and wellness magazine. It sounds funny to describe it as a lifestyle and wellness magazine because I don't know, I think of like Good Housekeeping. It's not Good Housekeeping, but it has a ton of really great research-based articles in there from all kinds of different health and wellness topics. So it is an amazing, amazing resource. They did one specifically on cancer. This is the first issue of the Cancer magazine. They are doing another issue specifically solely dedicated to cancer. You will see articles from great research from the University of Miami to Dr. Jeff Burgess's group out of the University of Arizona to my boss, Dr. Jenke out of NDRI, bless you. There is all kinds of great resources in this, so check out the original cancer guide. You can find it online at Crackle's website. Crackle spelled funny with a Y, C-R-A-C-K-Y-L. And then on the next slide, there's a QR code to download Crackle's app. It is 100% free. You can download it, get it on your phone. You can access versions of the magazine. You can access different articles. And they have articles online in web format only that didn't appear in the print magazine. Now, the magazine you can access in the print format or online in a digital format, but then online and on the app has even more content than the magazine has. Next slide, please. Okay, we're gonna see if this video will play. I just brought a video about the NFR, which was mentioned earlier, and how important it is to register for the National Firefighter Registry. So if it plays, they'll explain it better than I will, but if it doesn't play, Curtis and David explained a little bit about how important it is to register for the NFR. The goal, like they said, is to register 30,000 firefighters so we can follow them long term. So, and it's important for firefighters that have cancer or that don't have cancer to enroll in the study so that we can look at the different demographic factors of a firefighter, right? Why do some get cancer and why do some not get cancer? It's super easy to sign up. The initial survey takes a little bit of time because you have to fill out the organizations that you've worked for and a little bit of health history, and that helps them know kind of your baseline so that moving forward, they can follow you over time and know how things may change. So, to join the NFR, you can either go to cdc.gov/NFR or you can scan this QR code that's up here. I highly encourage every one of you here today to be in the NFR, advocate, be an advocate or the champion for your department. Take this QR code back or this website back to your department and encourage everyone in your department to sign up. They actually have what's called a gold helmet sticker for departments that get, I think it's over 70% of the department signed up. You are eligible to be a gold helmet department, which is super cool. So it can definitely be like a bit of a competition between departments in the area, but get everyone signed up for the NFR. As I mentioned, so important to just track your health over time, same as tracking your health through the Exposure app. And with that, I mentioned I'd tell you a little bit about Science to the Station. So it's our translation and dissemination arm. It is so important that research doesn't live solely among the researchers. We have to get better at talking to the fire service and giving the results back. That's how changes get made. We talked earlier about why policy has changed around cigarette smoking, right? And how that's changed the levels or rates of cigarette smoking in the fire service. So we have a conference every November. It's upcoming November 3rd through 6th. This year it's going to be in Kansas City, which is exciting for me because that happens to be my hometown. That's not why it's there. Last year we were in Loveland, Colorado. The year before that we were at Emmitsburg at the National Fire Academy. But it's an amazing conference. It's all things health and wellness. So absolutely there's cancer, from cancer to cardiovascular disease to sleep to nutrition. It's a great chance for networking. It really is an awesome time. Next slide, please. With that, I want to leave you with my contact information. That's my cell phone and my work email. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you all so much for taking the time to be here today and for allowing me to come and chat with you. I really have enjoyed all the speakers so far, and I am just happy to be a part of this, so thank you.